Sometimes when a new client starts healing work, they might ask why an energy healing session is so short. Last week, we looked at this question of how energy healing works and included an excerpt from an interview we did with Dr. Brad Nelson, who created the body code and the belief code and so on. This week, we revisit a different part of that interview where we address directly this question of what the ideal length of a healing session should be. And I want to ask you a bit about session length as well, and I'll use my experience for this. So when I started, I did 50-minute sessions, and I worked quite fast as well. So we covered a huge amount of imbalances in those sessions. And what I found was that, we could go to the end for each person. Nobody's body said that's enough. And every time we had an imbalance, there were like maybe 8 or 9 imbalances associated with it. There were these huge chunks. And the clients were very happy because they were getting all this work done. But I had a feeling at some point, well, this isn't right. This isn't optimal. This isn't working the best way it could. So as a next step, I went down to 40 minutes for a session. I went from 50 minutes to 40. And what I found a number of things when that happened. First thing I found was that the groups of imbalances became much smaller. So you'd get an imbalance and maybe just a trapped emotion or just a couple of things associated with it. People maxed out much earlier in the session. So maybe after 20 minutes or 30 minutes, their body said that's enough. And I was sort of thinking, do you know what? Maybe I'm shortchanging people here. I'm giving them less. But what I found was that the results that people got from these shorter sessions where fewer imbalances were released were much better than the longer ones with loads. And now I'm wanting to go down to 30 minutes again. It's a big, it's a big thing to do. I'll put it to my clients and see how they feel about it. But to go down to 30 minutes with, just on because it's starting to feel like 40 minutes is too long now. And I wonder what your thoughts are about this and how you might explain the fact that sometimes releasing fewer things leads to better results.
Right, exactly. Well, if you think about the early days of the U.S. Back in the 1800s, when in the western part of the U.S. we had forests that covered hundreds of millions of acres, and they were doing logging. There were people called loggers that would cut down the trees, and they'd cut all the branches off of a tree that had been felled, and then they'd roll it down to the river. And they would have all these logs in the river, hundreds of thousands of logs sometimes would get stuck, and they would form what they called a logjam. Well, there were special loggers whose job was to look at the logjam and identify what they called the key log. And the key log was one log, or sometimes 2 or 3, that if removed would allow all the other logs to start flowing down the river again. And this is costing them money, right? Every hour that goes by, all the logs are stuck. And sometimes these would go for miles. Well, I always try to have an intention that I want the biggest imbalance. I want the biggest, I think of it, sometimes I talk about it as the big tuna, right? What's the biggest fish? What's the biggest imbalance that I can pull out right now and correct that will make the most difference for this person? And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind and have that intention to do, because what it does then is sometimes I think you pull out the most important thing and then other things can start to flow, kind of like the log jam in the river. And so I think that what eventually will happen to you is you'll get probably down to 20 minutes, maybe 10. I used to do my sessions in 20 minutes. And what I would do is I'd watch the clock, and I would spend the first 5 minutes just connecting with the person and finding out what's been going on and, talking about their families and whatever. And then as soon as that 5 minutes was over, we would jump right in. And so really I was doing sessions in 15 minutes. Yeah. But I found that was plenty of time to find those imbalances. And sometimes when I work on people now, I'll just have an intention of, I want to find the 3 biggest, most weighty imbalances that I can find right now. Now, of course, I'm not doing the practice. I don't have a practice anymore. I just work on friends and occasional people. And then, of course, I'm doing events and things. But that's what I try to do now is I try to look for, at least initially, to look for the three biggest imbalances that I can find. So I think as time goes on, you'll find out that 20 minutes, a 20-minute session, plenty of time, and yeah. So that's good. It's interesting that you're going through that process.
Yeah, it's a really interesting process. So I guess when you clear the logjam, you don't need to clear all of the other stuff because it takes care of itself because the blockage has been removed. Is that right?
Yeah, to one degree or another, that of course is unknown to us. If we have that intention to find the biggest tunas, the biggest imbalances we can find, other things will flow. I mean, sometimes certain trapped emotions are like logs in that log jam. So you clear maybe a big trapped emotion, and they might actually start to flow down and release by themselves. I think that can happen. Just like, if you go to a massage therapist or you're getting a Reiki treatment or something, and all of a sudden you have a spontaneous emotion that's released. Well, that can happen, I think. So, if you think about all the imbalances that a person might have going on, the subconscious mind really truly is like a computer. It's like Google. It's far, far beyond Google. It's incomprehensibly powerful. But if we just simply have that intention, then I think it can help us to get things done more efficiently and help people faster.
So why do you think these log jams get cleared more easily in the shorter sessions when we're releasing less things than in the longer ones? Why aren't they included in the massive bunch of imbalances we do in the bigger sessions?
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that that your intention has changed. See, because before your intention was, hey, we got 50 minutes, we got to fill it up, right? Well, the subconscious mind of the person you're working on, they understand that. Yeah. So it's like, well, all right, let's give them all these various things. But when the time frame changed, now what's your intention? Well, we got to make hay while the sun shines. We've only got 40 minutes now. So you're going to have to give me more important stuff. That was unspoken, but yet, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do sessions in 10 minutes if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I do with my family in 5 or 10 minutes when I'm working on them.
There you go.
But then I have the luxury of doing them every day, whereas with a client, it's not so much. No, that's really interesting. And I guess it's that connection between the healer and the client's subconscious mind that is direct. Yeah. Because whatever we think, the healer's going to be thinking. If it's a 50-minute session and it ends after 30 minutes, the healer's going to be thinking, "Oh no, I'm shortchanging them. I was thinking that." And the client's going to be thinking, "Oh no, I've been shortchanged. I've paid for a 50-minute session and it's ending after half an hour." Whereas if both of that, where it's reframed in both cases, then it sort of maybe clears the channel between the minds to be able to come up with the most important stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you, I think 20 minutes is about the ideal time frame. Yeah. Ultimately, you'll probably get to that point. And in 20 minutes, I never had a problem finding whatever needed to be found. And it's just interesting. You're moving in that direction. So keep me posted. Let me know how that goes.
I will do. That's great.
So I haven't quite brought my sessions down, at least not yet, to the 20 minutes that Dr. Brad suggests. I do 25 minutes for the body code and half an hour for the belief code. And I keep them a little longer because, just in case there are technical difficulties at the start, occasionally somebody is late or a session is overrunning. And sometimes, especially at the beginning, a client might need a little bit of help to help define what their goal should be, and we'll do other videos on that sort of thing. Also, the belief code, there are occasions when a very complex belief system comes up and then it takes a bit more time to unpack all of that. That's why those are a bit longer. But definitely, I find that much shorter sessions are much more powerful. And most of the time, we don't need the full length of the session. The work itself happens quite quickly, and the quicker it happens, the better I find the results tend to be. It's a general rule, a rule of thumb. You can find out more about how I work on the Heartful Healing website at heartfulhealing.co.uk or here on our YouTube channel. Next week, we're going to begin a 2-part series about how the way we think has a material effect on the life that we experience. Starting with part 1, about how we can actually choose what's true. But for now, I'm going to leave you with this week's wise words, which come from the 1980s.
To improve the way you're feeling, book a session with Heartful Healing.